So a list of core participants has just been released regarding the upcoming Lucy Letby inquiry. In this video I'm going to take you through an article which discusses these individuals in some detail. Then I'm going to take you through an article which was released shortly after Lucy Letby's conviction. This discusses many of the named individuals and their treatment towards Lucy Letby during her time at the Countess of Chester Hospital. A hospital chief who was accused of ignoring concerns about Lucy Letby has been given a formal role at the inquiry into her murder spree. Tony Chambers, who is the former chief executive of the Countess of Chester Hospital, has been named as a core participant in the upcoming inquiry. The 57-year-old, who resigned from his £160,000 a year role 2 months after Letby was arrested, is joined by the hospital's former medical director Ian Harvey, former Director of Nursing Alison Kelly, and former HR Director Sue Hodgkinson. The full list of core participants also includes the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, the NHS, the Department for Health and Social Care, the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and the Care Quality Commission. A core participant is someone with a significant interest in an inquiry. As part of this, they are given the opportunity to make opening and closing statements via legal representatives, suggest lines of questioning at oral hearings, apply to ask questions of witnesses, and be provided with advance copies of reports. Okay, so let's take a look at this core list of participants here, and then I'll take you through an article which was released shortly after Lucy Letby's conviction. Now this goes into some detail regarding rumours of Lucy Letby's treatment during her time at the Countess of Chester Hospital. So here we have the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, the Department for Health and Social Care, the Countess of Chester Hospital NHS Foundation Trust, the Nursing and Midwifery Council, Care Quality Commission, NHS England, Anthony Chambers, Ian Harvey, Alison Kelly and Susan Hodgkinson. However, there is a notable omission from this list, and that is Karen Rees. Now, Karen Rees was the former head of nursing at the Countess of Chester Hospital, yet her name doesn't appear on this list. Now, this was an individual who, if we remember rightly, was quite outspoken after Lucy Letby's conviction, and she was someone who actually spent time with Lucy Letby during her suspension. Yet, as I say, her name is nowhere to be seen. It'll be interesting to see if that is added at a later date. I will now take you through an article which was released very shortly after Lucy Letby's conviction. And as I say, this discusses some of the rumours regarding Lucy Letby's treatment during her time at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Revealed: the files that show how Lucy Letby was treated as a victim. When doctors warned that she might be a killer, hospital bosses took her side, offering to support her with a master's degree and find her a role at a top children's hospital. This is the inside story. Lucy Letby sat with her parents in a meeting with senior managers at the Countess of Chester Hospital where she worked, waiting patiently for an apology. She had prepared a statement that was read out by her parents to Tony Chambers, the hospital's chief executive, about being bullied and victimised on the neonatal unit. It was December 22nd, 2016, and for the previous 18 months, 2 doctors on the unit have been trying to find an answer for a series of mysterious deaths of babies. Their detective work had led them to a single common denominator: Lucy Letby. The neonatal nurse had been on shift for each of the incidents. Rumours of a killer on the ward had spread, and Letby had complained about the doctors and their finger-pointing, claiming she was being wrongly blamed. Chambers, who had trained as a nurse, was convinced by Letby's account, and in front of her parents John and Susan offered sincere apologies on behalf of the hospital trust. The doctors in question would be dealt with. Except the doctors were right. By that point, Letby had secretly murdered 7 babies and tried to kill 6 more, one of them twice. An investigation by the Sunday Times, based on a cache of internal documents, can now reveal in detail how the hospital delayed calling the police for months, and that senior management, including the board, sided with Letby against doctors after commissioning perfunctory investigations. The files, including the outcome of a grievance case that Letby brought against the trust in September 2016, revealed that an apology from the hospital and the doctors was not all the 33-year-old got. She was also to be offered a placement at the world-famous Alderhay Children's Hospital in Liverpool and was to be given support for a master's degree or advanced nurse training. The grievance report details how consultants first raised concerns with board directors in 2015 and that doctors had been heard referring to killing on the ward. One doctor was said to have described a drawer of doom containing links between Letby and as many as 16 unexpected deaths and collapses of babies on the neonatal unit. Jim McCormack, a senior doctor, told the ward manager, "You are harbouring a murderer." But Ian Harvey, the medical director, told the grievance the trust wanted to protect Lucy Letby from these allegations. A senior nurse, Karen Rees, had told Letby the intention was to get her back onto the neonatal unit. Some doctors were threatened with misconduct investigations and their attempts to escalate their worries were met with angry responses. One nurse described the consultants as conducting a witch hunt against Letby. In February 2016, Dr. Breary, who remained suspicious of Letby, carried out a half-day thematic review into the deaths and collapses on the neonatal unit. With the help of a specialist consultant from Liverpool, he tried to join the dots. The working group produced a report detailing complex clinical issues alongside a mortality table and an appendix. The appendix, which was reproduced in a police report, showed Letby was on shift for each of the deaths and collapses and that they had only happened between midnight and 4 a.m. On February the 15th, Dr. Breary emailed a table of deaths showing Letby on shift for each one to Ian Harvey, who, as well as being medical director, had also been a respected orthopaedic surgeon. Still, there was no action, and hospital management, believing Letby's involvement was a coincidence, allowed her to continue her work at the neonatal unit. Dr. Breary continued to be concerned and emailed Dr. Jayram, quote, "I think we still need to talk about Nurse Letby." The head nurses at the hospital were also emailing each other. On March the 17th, Erian Powell, the neonatal unit's ward manager, emailed the hospital's chief nurse, Alison Kelly, and they discussed how Letby was a commonality in all the deaths. Erian Powell asked for help. Her plea went unanswered, and she twice had to chase for a meeting, getting one 56 days later. On April the 7th, Erian Powell moved Letby from night to day shifts, telling her it was to support her well-being because she had been present for so many of the collapses. 2 days later, after the switch, Letby attacked twin baby boys. She attempted to murder child L using insulin, and child M was injected with air. Both survived. These attacks would become a cornerstone of evidence in the police and prosecution's case against her. The prosecution was able to show the jury that the deaths and collapses followed Letby from night to day shifts. At the beginning of May 2016, Dr. Breary emailed Alison Kelly, the chief nurse, flagging Letby's presence at the deaths and also asking for a meeting. Alison Kelly sent it to Ian Harvey, the medical director, expressing alarm that a doctor was implicating a nurse and told him she had been reassured there was no evidence but that a wider review might be needed. She asked senior nurse managers to examine any staffing trend linked to the deaths, adding that it was potentially very serious. After the exchange of messages, Dr. Breary and other doctors met Alison Kelly and Ian Harvey to set out their concerns. They agreed to review all deaths and to keep Letby on day shifts for 3 months. Doctors remained concerned, and in one meeting with Erian Powell on May the 16th, a senior doctor told her, "You are harbouring a murderer." In June 2016, Letby travelled to Ibiza for a week-long holiday in the sun with 2 close friends. She returned to work on June 23rd, texting a friend the day before, quote, "Probably be back in with a bang, lol." Within 72 hours, she murdered 2 triplets, child O and child P. The latest unexpected deaths proved traumatic for the neonatal unit. Dr. Breary held a staff debrief, but noticed Letby did not seem upset at all. He decided he wanted Letby off the ward. On June 24th, he called the hospital's nursing director Karen Rees and expressed concerns about Letby being on duty. He wanted to stop her working. Dr. Breary told the trial that Karen Rees insisted there was no evidence against Letby and said she would take responsibility for allowing the nurse to continue to work. June's deaths caused a flurry of emails and meetings between doctors, nurses and hospital executives. Quote, "We need help from outside agencies," one doctor emailed. "I believe it is the police." Dr. J-Ram replied to the email chain, with Ian Harvey, the hospital's second-in-command, copied in. Quote, "They, the hospital directors, do not seem to see the same degree of urgency as we do." Ian Harvey replied, denying a lack of action and saying concerns were being discussed and action taken. He told the doctors all emails will cease forthwith. At the end of June, the executive directors met and sources say they debated for the first time calling in the police, with notes from the meeting recording, quote, "All say yes to the police." The discussion went on to consider the impact of an investigation and the arrest of Letby and the subsequent reputational issues and impact on the trust. The evidence was circumstantial and directors had concerns about the unit leadership and fears that doctors were carrying out a witch hunt. Alison Kelly, the chief nurse, contacted the Nursing and Midwifery Council for advice about Letby and whether to refer the problems to the police. The trust did not contact the police, but the board agreed to downgrade the unit so the sickest babies were sent to neighbouring hospitals. This was designed to relieve pressure on the unit. In late June, Ian Harvey and Tony Chambers, the chief executive on a salary of £160,000 plus benefits, decided to ask the Royal College of Paediatricians and Child Health for an independent review. The parameters were set narrowly and did not specifically ask the experts to look at Letby's actions or the deaths, but to carry out a general review of the service. Ian Harvey and Tony Chambers met the doctors and told them the trust had considered calling the police but would handle the situation in a different way. For the first time, she was told of her link to the baby's deaths and that she would be one of several staff placed under supervision. She was visibly upset and distressed. Staffing shortages meant she could not be supervised on the ward, and in mid-July she was redeployed to an administrative role. She never returned to the unit, despite her best efforts. On July the 14th, the Trust Board held an extraordinary meeting at which the neonatal unit was the only item of discussion. Dr. J-Ram and Dr. Breary presented their concerns. Discussions included a link between Letby and the unexplained deaths and the possibility of involving the police. The board also discussed installing CCTV. One source said the doctors were told that calling in the police would mean blue tape everywhere and the end of the unit, as well as the trust's reputation. The next day, a non-executive director, James Wilkie, went to Alison Kelly with concerns following the board meeting. She agreed to escalate his concerns. At the start of September, the RCPCH arrived and Letby was one of the first to be interviewed. She hoped that engaging with the review might help her back to a frontline nursing role. At the same time, she was fighting back against the doctors she claimed were falsely blaming her for the deaths. On September the 7th, she raised a formal grievance against the Trust for victimisation and discrimination. She said she felt she had been singled out, moved away from the job she loved, and the hospital trust had not been honest about doctors' allegations against her. Her Royal College of Nursing Union representative emailed hospital bosses outlining grave concerns about her treatment. Letby was demanding to know the grounds for an investigation into her practice. In October, the RCPCH reported back to Tony Chambers and Ian Harvey. They found that what had happened appeared unusual and needs further inquiry to try to explain the cluster of deaths. They recommended a forensic review of each death, but it never happened. The review also found that not all the deaths had been classed as serious incidents, and some were not sent for post-mortem examinations, despite this being best practice. It also found gaps in staffing and poor decision-making, but it did not explain why babies had died. Ian Harvey contacted Dr. Jane Horden, an expert neonatologist at the Royal Free Hospital in North London, asking her to examine the deaths, but she told him she could offer only a summary. Another consultant at Alderhay told Ian Harvey he should commission an expert review. 3 separate experts had now advised him to do this. A draft version of the RCPCH report, including a confidential section linking the baby deaths with Letby and the subjective concerns of the doctors, was drawn up, but only a redacted version was circulated to the board, the doctors, or bereaved parents. When Letby lodged her grievance complaint in September 2016, it started a 2.5-month investigation into her treatment by the hospital and in particular the consultants. Documents show that in particular she wanted to know what allegations were being investigated about her. Doctors who had raised concerns about her being a killer, including Dr. Breary and Dr. Jairam, were forced to sit through interviews along with their union reps, where an investigator grilled them about Letby's bullying complaint. By now, the relationship between 7 senior consultants and the hospital's management had deteriorated. The doctors felt they had not been listened to, and police needed to be brought in. In October, the executive managers met again, and sources say they were told that not calling the police was the right decision, and that the doctors' evidence was unconvincing. 10 hospital staff were interviewed as part of Letby's complaint. Many of them had threatened to call the police if she was allowed back on the ward. Not everybody agreed with them. One senior nurse gave evidence saying the doctors were operating a witch hunt, adding, quote, "I hope she returns to the unit. We would be delighted." Ian Harvey is quoted as saying the doctors' concerns felt purely circumstantial. "We wanted more if we were going to call the police." He said the executive team felt strongly that if they raised concerns with the police without foundation, Letby would have been arrested, which would have resulted in a bomb site for the trust to manage. As part of the grievance, investigators looked into Letby's conduct too. The formal report found no concerns about her competence, no red flags according to documents. The grievance process had found no evidence to justify calling in the police. In fact, it found the doctors were at fault for suspecting her of murder. Quote, "This behaviour has resulted in you, a junior colleague and fellow professional, feeling isolated and vulnerable, putting your reputation in question." The Grievance Enquiry told Letby this is unacceptable and could be viewed as victimisation. The report said the hospital would aid her professional development by supporting her with a master's degree or an advanced neonatal course. She was also offered weekly welfare meetings with a senior nurse. Documents show that hospital managers proposed offering her an observational role at Alderhay. On November 12th, the investigation was completed, and 3 days later, HR and senior nurses discussed Letby's possible return to the neonatal unit, which had not suffered a single mysterious death or collapse since her transfer more than 4 months earlier. 3 days before Christmas 2016, Letby and her parents arrived at the hospital. Tony Chambers issued her with a full apology on behalf of the hospital trust and assured her family that the troublesome doctors who had victimised her would be dealt with accordingly. Letby had had her revenge. Ian Harvey said the report had found that incidents in the ward were down to issues of leadership, escalation, timely intervention, and that it does not highlight any single individual. He said some case reviews were continuing, but were not expected to change the finding. The doctors were not invited to the board, and a victim impact statement from Letby's grievance was read out. By now, Dr. Breary and Dr. Jairam, along with 5 other clinicians, were being backed into a corner by management. In January, they met Tony Chambers and Ian Harvey and were told, quote, "Things have been said and done that were below the values and standards of the trust." Managers also demanded mediation between Letby and the 2 lead doctors, Dr. Breary and Dr. Jairam. Ian Harvey told them it would protect them from a referral to the General Medical Council, the doctor's watchdog. Their BMA union rep told them that while there were disturbing similarities to Beverly Allett, they should agree to write Letby an apology letter. They reluctantly agreed, but behind the scenes kept trying to find an explanation for the deaths. In late January, they wrote to Tony Chambers asking for a full investigation. Quote, "What is the reason for the unexpected and unexplained deaths? What should we as paediatricians do now?" On March 27th, Dr. Brewery again told the hospital's most senior managers that it was time to bring in the police. Tony Chambers finally requested a formal investigation in a letter to the Chief Constable of Cheshire Police on May 2nd, 2017. 2 weeks later, after meeting the doctors, police launched Operation Hummingbird.